Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Sorry to be a little late with you. Running around all today and just preparing our interview that I just conducted with the 45th and perhaps soon to be 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. It airs tomorrow night. Reminder, folks, Thursday, October 24th on Stakelbeck tonight. It's my nightly show on TBN, the world's largest Christian television network. Airs at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow night, October 24th. You won't want to miss it. And a big topic, which is very relevant for our topic today on the live stream that we discuss, is the gathering storm, as I've called it, against America and the free world and against Israel as well. And the charter members of what I've called the Gathering Storm Coalition: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. I talk about that with President Trump in the interview tomorrow night. We talk about Iran in particular, its threats against him, why Israel needs to prevail, and why America needs to assume the mantle, reassume, I should say, the mantle of leader of the free world that it abdicated under the Biden-Harris administration over the past few years. But this Gathering Storm Coalition we're talking about is very relevant to the subject at hand. Over these 3 days here, starting yesterday, today, and tomorrow, I believe, in Russia, we have a meeting of some of the members of that Gathering Storm Coalition, the annual BRICS, B-R-I-C-S coalition meeting in Russia. Now, BRICS, the charter members, we talked about the Gathering Storm Coalition, the charter members of this BRICS coalition, not all are hostile to the United States or the free world, but you've got BRICS, B for Brazil, R for Russia, I for India, C for China, and S for South Africa. These five powerful and influential nations came together and formed this coalition. Now, right now, it's not some sort of formal defense pact like we've seen with NATO or the Warsaw Pact or anything like that. But it seems to be more an economic coming together of these five nations. And they've added other nations, among them Iran. And I believe Saudi Arabia is set to join as well. Some more details here. And look, you saw the thumbnail on today's live stream, and it said very clearly, it asked the question, New World Order? And you might say, oh, man, I don't know about that. You're going a little far. Oh, no. Vladimir Putin and Iran, two of the members of this coalition, have talked openly about establishing a new world order. Their words, not mine. And when you have these countries coming together that are not Western, and some of whom are inherently hostile to the West and the free world, well, you truly do have the makings of a new world order. Now, it's interesting. This video will probably get flagged because the term new world order is used. It's usually used in the sense of globalist, right? You think the World Economic Forum, you think the Great Reset, you think Klaus Schwab and George Soros and a one world globalist, internationalist, socialist kind of government. But when they talk about a new world order, it's more a realignment in their view. And it boils down to this, folks. The United States knocked out of the top spot as the leader of the free world, the most powerful, prosperous country in the world, and a union of other nations, non-Western nations, kind of coming to the fore. And that's the genesis for this BRICS coalition. Here's a little bit more about what we saw today. Nearly 3 years after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin is staging a summit with more than a dozen world leaders in a signal that, far from being alone, a coalition of countries stands behind him. I'm just reading this straight off my phone. The 3-day BRICS Summit, which started yesterday, in the southwestern Russian city of Kazan, is the first meeting of the group of major emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, since it expanded earlier this year to include Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, and, drumroll please, Iran. Now, I mentioned Saudi Arabia. There were some rumblings that the Saudis may join. Unclear that they plan to do that. Seems they haven't yet. But we've got some big Saudi Arabia news, by the way, vis-a-vis Iran that you'll want to hear about a bit later in this live stream. Trust me. But at this BRICS Summit, again, they consider themselves the emerging economies. Vladimir Putin met with Chinese dictator Xi Jinping. Masoud Pezeshkian, the new Iranian president, is also there, no doubt meeting with Xi and Putin. And also, quote here, some from outside the club, the BRICS coalition, which now includes 9 nations, like Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, are also expected to join. Now, that is how you know this, well, at least the goal for this among some, not all of the members, is certainly to make this something much different than Western. I mean, Erdogan's in there. And by the way, he's got a foot in NATO, of course. He's got the second largest military in NATO, but he has shifted increasingly east, obviously, needless to say, in his time as the demagogue at the head of the Turkish government. And look, it's tragic, folks. We say this a lot because Turkey was a loyal friend and ally of the United States and Israel until Erdogan took the helm in 2002. It's been all downhill since then. I use the term demagogue. Other than the Iranian regime, he's arguably the most strident, there's a word for you, anti-Israel world leader there is. He truly is a demagogue against the world's one and only Jewish state. And I believe that has prophetic implications, as we have discussed and as we will discuss before I wrap up here today. But here's a little bit more. This is, again, the largest international gathering that Russia has hosted since the start of the Ukraine war in February 2022, and the gathering of BRICS and other countries this week spotlights, quote, a growing convergence of nations who hope to see a shift in the global balance of power. That's what we're talking, they call it a new world order. And in the case of some, like Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran, they want to directly counter the United States-led West. Wow. And Putin is saying that he wants to gather a global majority of nations that would challenge American global leadership. He has hailed this BRICS alliance as a group of nations that just want to work together. Quote, this is Vladimir Putin from his mouth, that will be a substantial element of the new world order. That's what he calls it. Though he denied the group was an anti-Western alliance. So he is using the term, Vladimir Putin, new world order. Iran has also used it. So it's just interesting. I guess there's different context that phrase is used in, right? Again, as I mentioned a minute ago, usually when you think of new world order, you think of this globalist, one world government, antichrist-led one world government. Well, their phrasing of it is more a different balance of power shift away from the West. That's what it boils down to. I want to know what you think, because a lot of people have talked about this BRICS coalition, commented on it here on the live stream over the months. Do you believe this is prophetic, number one? Again, you've got China, Russia, and Iran together. You've got Erdogan of Turkey trying to angle his way in as well. Prophetic implications, Egypt and the UAE are also in there. Look, they have peace treaties with Israel, obviously, but they're from a hostile region, the Middle East, hostile overall to the West and to Israel. I'm sad to say the majority of the Middle East, not very friendly to the Western world. What do you think of this? We've got a highly educated audience that follows all of this very, very closely. I'd like to get your thoughts on this BRICS coalition. Something to be concerned about? Is it prophetic? Is this part of the prophetic chess pieces moving on the board? Would love to get your thoughts. Leave your comment here. And by the way, while you're here, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. You know, I talk about the United States as a leader of the free world. We've got viewers from all over the world here on the channel. And you might not like that. You might say, hey, look, I'm not American, and you're being a very America-centric when you say that. Folks, like it or not, that's the way the global order, quote unquote, has been since the end of World War II. The United States has been the most powerful nation in the world. I don't say that in a triumphalist sort of way. It's a fact. Prior to the U.S., the sun never set on the British Empire, and we can go on. These are facts of history. And if the United States, hey, November 5th is looming, if we're not careful in this nation, that will not be the case anymore. Depending on how things pan out on November 5th, obviously, we've been discussing this. It's a difference between faith, family, and freedom, the values that made this country great, the United States, in the first place. or the three S's of socialism, secularism, and separation. There's really no in between. It's really a stark contrast between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, needless to say. So, but all that said, when the United States steps back, and we saw this under Barack Obama, and we've seen it clearly under Joe Biden, or what's left of him, we've seen them step back. And the United States is kind of taking a backseat. Some have said leading from behind. When that happens, the world's worst actors fill the vacuum. I can give you an example, a few examples from the Obama administration. ISIS, yeah, incredible. The United States pulls out of Iraq in 2011. No one wants a long-term occupation of Iraq. But clearly, if we were to remove every last troop, which we did for a time until they had to return to face ISIS, clearly the very fragile balance in the region at the time, 13, 14 years ago, was going to collapse, and it did. Out of that vacuum that the U.S. withdrawal created, ISIS filled the vacuum. So did Vladimir Putin. Russian forces entered Syria in September 2015. Iran was on the march, fresh off that nuclear deal it signed with the Obama administration. So the world's worst actors were on the march. That kind of came to a screeching halt when Donald Trump took office. You may not like Donald Trump. You may love Donald Trump, but I'll tell you what, it's a fact that peace through strength was a real thing under his administration. For those 4 years, no wars in the Middle East, in Europe. He leaves office. We talk about that vacuum. The world explodes. The world has been on fire since Trump left office. It's pretty clear. Major war in Europe, major wars, plural, in the Middle East, and perhaps more to come. I don't believe October 7th happens if Trump's in office, and I don't believe Russia invades Ukraine if he's in office. And I don't believe Iran is launching 500 projectiles at Israel in a 6-month span, in April and then again a few weeks ago. Peace through strength. No one has been tougher on the Iranian regime than Trump. And again, you might be watching, oh, I can't stand Trump. Great. You know what? You don't like his tweets. He's mean in your opinion. Okay. What about the policies? They worked for America and for the world. But look, if you think Kamala is ready to tangle with Putin and Xi and the Iranian regime and Hezbollah and all the rest, well, you're entitled to your opinion. That's why I live in a free country for now, the United States, and you can vote for who you want to and support who you want to. That's great. But to me, it's a pretty, again, stark contrast between the two. All that said, it's clear that evil, dark forces are on the march. And that gathering storm coalition, Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, at the head of it, certainly. But they're the charter members, but also who else? Belarus, we've got Venezuela, we've got the Assad regime in Syria, of course, we've got Cuba, we've got Erdogan's Turkey. And it's such a tragedy because the people of Turkey are great, but it's a radical government, just like the people of Iran are great, but it's a radical government. It's the regime that's the problem. Then we've got Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian proxies like the Houthis. This is the modern day gathering storm coalition. One of my heroes, Winston Churchill, coined that phrase, the gathering storm. But that's what we have right now. And it's really unraveled over the past 4 years in terms of a global, in a global sense, in an international perspective, with these bad actors coming together. Again, we're going to hit this in a little bit, but I'd like to know if you think this is prophetic implications. To me, that's a fascinating topic we should discuss. We need to discuss as well Iran and Saudi Arabia, military drills together. What? The two great rivals in the Muslim world for supremacy in the Muslim world, one on the Sunni side, the Saudis, then Iran on the Shia side. Wow. And then, of course, Israel, which I want to break down for you a little bit right now. Benjamin Netanyahu today said something that we knew and we've been reporting here, but quoting this from the Times of Israel, just reading this straight off my phone. Bibi, the Israeli prime minister, said that Israel had uncovered a plot by Hezbollah to attack Israel through underground tunnels using jeeps and missiles. He told French broadcasters, CNews and Europe 1, that if this Hezbollah plan had succeeded, such an assault would have been more damaging than the October 7th, 2023 Hamas onslaught. And this is quoting directly from Bibi. He said, quote, 100 meters, 200 meters from the border, the Israel-Lebanon border, we found tunnels that were preparing an invasion of Israel, an attack even greater than on October 7th, with jeeps, with motorbikes, with rockets, with missiles. They were planning an invasion. And he also told a French publication earlier this month that the Israeli army had found, surprise, surprise, cutting-edge Russian military hardware among Hezbollah's weapons storages that the IDF has uncovered in Lebanon. Now, I wonder how that would happen. Advanced Russian arms falling into the hands of Hezbollah. Maybe because Russia is openly aligned in a defense military alliance, full-blown now, with the Iranian regime, which is the master of Hezbollah. Maybe it's because Russian troops have been shoulder to shoulder with Iranian and Hezbollah troops for the past 9 years plus in Syria. Crazy thought, I know. But folks, look, it's very clear whose side Vladimir Putin is on. He has chosen the enemies of Israel. So he has chosen to align himself with the greatest enemies that the Jewish state has: Iran, Hezbollah, the Assad regime in Syria, and even hosting Hamas delegations in Moscow over the past year. He's made his choice. Don't kid yourself. And you might say, why are you being so tough on Putin? Some have said, I've had this conversation a bunch. He's a defender of Judeo-Christian Western civilization. He's a defender of Christianity. Oh, really? Again, and no one has been able to answer this with any credible answer other than, well, we made him do it. We forced him into their arms, the arms of China, Iran, and North Korea. This supposed defender of Christianity is in bed with the greatest persecutors of Christianity in the world, arguably the world's three worst persecutors of Christians: China, Iran, and North Korea. These are Vladimir Putin's friends. And deeper than that, he's openly aligned with them. Proudly meeting with China today at the BRICS conference. North Korean troops, apparently more and more synergy with Russian troops. The Iran-Russia relationship we've documented here extensively. So you can continue to try to sell me a bill of goods that Putin is somehow a defender of Christianity. Sorry, I'm not buying it. It doesn't mean, by the way, here's the other, well, you love Zelensky. Doesn't mean I think Zelensky is some great guy either. But we're talking about Vladimir Putin. The two don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can agree that Vladimir Putin is not a good guy. And that doesn't mean that we're all in on billions and billions, a blank check to Ukraine. I mean, the two, you can believe both things. Anyway, didn't mean to get on a tangent on that, but it's one of the things where I shake my head and say, wow, where's our discernment, especially as the body of Christ? There's Christians saying this. Vladimir Putin's a great guy. Where's our discernment as the body of Christ when it comes to these issues? Wow. But what do you think of this Hezbollah invasion that Israel averted? And we talked about this. Look, when Israel took out on, it was September 20th, the entire Radwan force of Hezbollah, the elite military unit of Hezbollah, their entire military command. Bibi said, look, and other Israelis said, when we took them out, thank God we took them out when we did, because they were planning to invade the Galilee. And now we have more particulars from the Prime Minister of Israel. They were going to do it, not just overland, but through those tunnels. Now, if you're a regular viewer of this show, you know I've been in those Hezbollah tunnels. I was there with the IDF. We went deep underground into a Hezbollah tunnel a little while back, and I've compared it to a feeling of descending into the bowels of hell. It was a horrific experience in that sense, stretching some 200 feet underground on the Israel-Lebanon border. And look, electrical work in there, well lit. These were not some little hole you dig in your backyard. No, this was a full-blown, there was concrete. It was actually insane the amount of money and time they must have spent to build these tunnels. Where, well, surprise, surprise, there are many of them. And the IDF now, as it fans out across southern Lebanon, is discovering more and more of these tunnels, thankfully, and destroying them. And you know what? They have to. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we've been telling you over the months, that some 60, maybe even 70,000 Israelis remain evacuated from northern Israel. And that's a great way to set up our partner for today's live stream, our good friends at Magen David Adom. Why? Because Magen David Adom is in the north with the neediest Israelis. It's in the south, helping the communities in and around on the Gaza border. Magen David Adom is Israel's emergency services system. These are Israel's first responders. You can support them at savelivesisrael.com. Look, they dispatch every ambulance in Israel, every single ambulance you see go out after a terror attack, after the Hezbollah rockets fall, Hamas rockets, in the wake of October 7th, Magen David Adom is there. They are the organization in Israel that dispatches not only all of the ambulances, but they also control the blood supply in Israel. This is an organization doing God's work, largely a volunteer force of people who leave their families to help Israel's most vulnerable people, victims of terror attacks in real time as it happens or in the immediate aftermath. And listen, since October 7th, some 30 Magen David Adom volunteers have lost their lives in the line of fire in this war. 17 ambulances have been destroyed. These are volunteer forces, EMTs, paramedics, first responders. SaveLivesIsrael.com. A lot of people say, hey, how can I support Israel, Eric, in this time of need? I can't get to Israel, but what can I do to help? Magen David Adom is a great place to start. SaveLivesIsrael.com. They need ambulances, bandages, medical supplies, so much more. They're stretched thin right now because of Hamas and Hezbollah. Genesis 12:3, I call it the Genesis 12:3 principle. Blessing Israel. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. Well, Magen David Adom is the perfect place to start in blessing God's people and God's land. Check them out. We're proud to partner with them here on the live stream. SaveLivesIsrael.com. You won't regret it. So this invasion that was averted of the north, folks, let's sit back for a second and imagine how horrific this would have been. Again, Hezbollah is a beast, and I do mean beast, far more powerful than Hamas, many more magnitudes in capability. Hezbollah, some 150,000. Well, they used to. A big caveat there. Apparently, according to sources in Israel, only about 30% of Hezbollah's firepower remains. Now, that's still a whole lot of firepower. That's thousands of fighters, well-trained, thousands of rockets, missiles, drones, still, but nothing like what it was prior to September 17th. Why is that a pivotal date? That was the date where Israel decided to send their offensive against Hezbollah into overdrive. That was a day of Operation Exploding Pager. And since then, we've seen Hezbollah's entire leadership destroyed, decimated. We've seen thousands of Hezbollah fighters killed or incapacitated. And we've seen an IDF ground invasion that is reclaiming territory. I shouldn't say reclaiming territory. I should say clearing territory of Hezbollah fighters who have made life a living hell for the residents of northern Israel over the past year plus. So Hezbollah's on its heels. It's reeling. But I'll tell you what, Hamas got ahead of the curve a little bit, and we've discussed this. Hamas all along wanted this to be the entire Iranian ring of fire igniting at once, meaning Hamas, Hezbollah, militias from Syria, they all invade Israel at once, while all of the proxies and Iran itself fire ballistic missiles, a horrific doomsday scenario that Israel miraculously, with the hand of God, has been able to stave it off. But Hamas went first. And on October 7th, 2023, they expected Hezbollah and Iran to follow, and they didn't to that kind of degree where Hamas was all in. They invaded southern Israel. Hezbollah did follow the following day, October 8th, 2023. It began firing rockets, missiles, drones. But Hezbollah, it was a limited war for about a year. Hezbollah, and they were quite literally getting away with murder. Not to say the IDF wasn't reacting. They were hitting Hezbollah back. But Hezbollah largely was every day. They thought, well, this is a managed war with a low-intensity war with Israel right now that we can manage. And the IDF wouldn't dare to strike us in Beirut or take out Nasrallah, the Radwan force, etc. Hey, I'll say it again. I'm a broken record, but it rings true. Evil is arrogant and evil is overconfident. And Hezbollah is evil and they fell prey to those vices. But also and evil in general is very stupid. That's why you saw Hezbollah leaders stay in Beirut. Did you not get the memo on September 20th when the Radwan force was taken out in Beirut? Yet Nasrallah and his successor, Safi ad-Din, both killed in Beirut as well in the weeks following. So I say all that to say Hezbollah is in very, very bad shape here. But what a game changer it would have been. I shudder to think if they would have been able to pull off an October 7th style attack, which, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, they were indeed planning. And Israel, again, folks, I've seen miracles over the past year plus in this war. Time and again, God has gone ahead of the IDF with just improbable, miraculous operations. And God has surrounded Israel with a divine iron dome, I would say. And we saw that in April, and we saw it on October 1st when Iran carried out these massive ballistic missile attacks. Well, strictly ballistic in October, ballistic cruise and drones back in April. I mean, that was, whoever heard of such a thing, for not to be one Israeli injured or wounded. I'm sorry, killed. A few were wounded, maybe running to a bomb shelter, but nothing serious. Let's not get too far there. There was a young Bedouin girl who was seriously injured in April, and a Palestinian man in Jericho was killed this month by shrapnel from one of those Iranian ballistic missiles. But in terms of the people of Israel, not one was killed and not one serious injury. 500 projectiles raining down on your tiny country the size of the state of New Jersey and not one person killed. That's a miracle of God, folks. and Israel's continued existence, and not only to continue to exist, not only to continue to survive, but to continue to thrive, it's proof of God's existence. Hey, I want to mention what's going on with Saudis and Iran. Now, they buried the hatchet about 2 years ago. But today, I mean, look, Saudi Arabia and Israel are talking normalization, right? And that's one of the reasons Hamas and documents seized, I guess, from the corpse of Yahya Sinwar or his hideouts, whatever, the Hamas leader who was killed last week, said as much. Hamas invaded on October 7th, 2023. They didn't wait for Hezbollah and their Iranian masters. They went solo. And again, the grand plan was for all of them, the entire ring of fire to ignite at once. But Hamas moved for two reasons. Number one, they saw internal discord in Israel as the left wing in Israel was rising up against Bibi in protest on the streets. And number two, they wanted to stave off a peace treaty between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Well, there's still talk that Israel and the Saudis are going to do it eventually, but this is interesting. It shows you the Saudis, I don't want to say they're playing both sides of the fence, but listen, they held military exercises with Iran recently in the Sea of Oman. The Saudi Defense Ministry confirmed today the two Middle East rivals, and they are rivals, severed diplomatic ties, but last year, under a surprise China brokered deal, remember that? They renewed ties, and now they're doing naval exercises together. And we talked about those Russia-Iran naval exercises over the weekend. So I think the Saudis are keeping all options open. Let's just say that. And I think if President Trump gets in office, then you'll see the Saudis, okay, closer to Israel, closer to the United States. But right now with Biden-Harris, who have been hostile to Saudi Arabia, quite frankly, the Saudis are keeping a foot in both arenas, so to speak. And they're hedging their bets, and they're keeping all options open. So look, if Harris gets in office, you might see the Saudis lean more towards the likes of Iran and Russia and China. They would consider that self-preservation, because if there's a weak United States, then the Saudis feel much more vulnerable and exposed. But I thought that was interesting. Again, it doesn't mean that Iran and Saudi Arabia suddenly have some alliance or cozy relations. And just because they restarted diplomatic relations earlier this year doesn't mean that either. But it does mean that the Saudis are, again, hedging their bets and seeing how this all shakes out. Just interesting to watch how the various players in the region are acting. Hey, reminder, tomorrow night, if you love the YouTube channel here, you will love our nightly show every weeknight on TBN. Stakelbeck Tonight, Monday through Friday, every weeknight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow night, Thursday, October 24th, my exclusive sit-down with President Trump. Jack Hibbs will also join us. And tonight, we've got Dr. Ben Carson and Franklin Graham joining us. So I really think you'll love our broadcast show. It's got all the maps and bells and whistles and graphics, by the way, that we can't have on a YouTube live stream. We've got on the TV show on a beautiful studio here in Dallas-Fort Worth. So strongly encourage you to check the show out every night, especially tomorrow night, the interview with President Trump. And a reminder for our premium members, October 31st, tricks, treats, and a premium live stream for our premium members, me and you, Q&A. And if you're interested in premium membership, you can check out on the homepage under join. If you're not a premium member, we still love you. We love all our subscribers, but if you're here every day, you want to go a little bit deeper, you get the exclusive premium Q&A, just me and you answering your questions, plus the podcast called the Stackscast. And hey, any contribution helps to keep us going. Unfortunately, all of this that we do isn't free, so any contribution is a blessing for sure. We appreciate all of you, so check that out. We've also got that Stakelbeck Tonight merch. Remember, it just launched. We've got hats, mugs, tote bags, T-shirts, some cool stuff. Hopefully some hoodies coming soon. It's going to start getting cold eventually, but not here in Texas yet. It's 90 degrees in Dallas-Fort Worth today. In my homeland of Philadelphia, it's probably, in the 60s, a little chillier by this time of year. But Texas is a great place, no doubt. But I say all that to say, thanks for joining us. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.